Hello everyone. This is an in-depth analysis of Rocksteady Studios' Batman Arkham Asylum, released in 2009 for the PS3 and 360. I'll be examining the PC Game of the Year edition, released the following year. Therefore, I won't be able to include the PlayStation exclusive playable Joker content. Since this video will go over the game as a whole, if you haven't played it yet and want to, I'd do that before watching. My aim is to try to analyze the game as best I can, but in certain instances I'll try to be as objective as possible by keeping three questions in mind. What did Rocksteady want to achieve when making this game? Exactly how did they achieve it, and how well did they do so? Well, first, Rocksteady was tasked with making an original Batman title with Eidos Entertainment, and Square Enix, apparently, after Eidos obtained the Batman license. It's been said many times that there were basically no good Batman games prior to Arkham Asylum. I would contend it's far more accurate to say there were no Batman games that were good because of Batman. Besides, licensed titles in general are notorious for bad quality, with a few exceptions. So Rocksteady landed on the answer to my first question. They wanted to make the quintessential Batman game, where the player is Batman. So, who and what is Batman? He's a martial artist, a ninja, rich enough to afford gadgets that compensate for his lack of superpowers, and he's smart enough to be known as the world's greatest detective. He lives in Gotham City, a dark, corrupt, and dangerous place. And of course, he confronts the most dangerous and insane people in Gotham. What do you need then to make the quintessential Batman game? You need the right atmosphere and setting, the gameplay to reflect Batman's character, and for a diverse cast of villains to provide engaging confrontations that are also true to character. In choosing the setting, I think Rocksteady had a couple problems to solve. They weren't going to be able to make some large-scale Gotham City level at the graphical fidelity I think they wanted. If they set the game in Gotham, they would need to make very confined levels that strain believability, or have invisible walls or something, which I don't think they wanted. The Arkham Asylum provides a relatively small place to work with. It already has context for having a bunch of villains in it, and they can make a believable, carefully designed space out of it, with consistent geography. The chosen art style of the game is a comic book come to life. The graphics are realistic, but the art style is clear. From the characters to the buildings, the proportion of everything is highly exaggerated. Each place has a color theme. The botanical gardens are green, the mansion is red and brown, the sewers are orange and yellow, and the Batcave is blue. It's a colorful game despite also being a dark one. The menus incorporate a comic book aesthetic. The pause menu lays down a black and white filter which thickens borders and makes the game appear to be hand-drawn. The character bios are all accompanied by stylized drawings rather than in-game models. Characters are voiced by returning animated series talent like Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill, and Eileen Sorkin. Paul Dini, who worked on the animated series and many comics, penned the script, which is why even the plot feels like it was torn out of a comic. The beginning of Arkham Asylum was very clearly designed around a first impression of the game, with the primary purpose of instilling a sense of atmosphere in players. Intensive treatment is dark, with a few harsh lights, creating the vibe of an interrogation room. You can hear Joker's weird one-liners.
Need to take my temperature? I'd be happy to drop my pants.
Security is everywhere. Batman just fits right in. Killer Croc is there, and he is imposing. He has to squat in the fetal position just to fit in the elevator, and when he stands all the way up, he threatens to eat you. And his inclusion is a great choice to communicate to players there's somewhere most people don't want to be. But if the intro did its job right, you should want to be here because you get to be here as Batman. In tandem with the opening cutscene, the intro sequence sets up the premise quickly, but also makes the player take some time to take in their surroundings. The only thing the player can do is walk and look. This lets the player see the major characters strewn throughout this sequence, listen to Joker's wisecracks, and notice the detail packed into the 4 or 5 minutes it takes to reach the next point. In regards to replayability, this sequence hits the mark in one way, but falls short in another. There are many little details that make a lot of sense when the player knows the entire backstory to the game's events, such as interactions between Joker and Bowles.
I thought I told you to stay quiet!
Oh, Frankie, you really should learn to keep that fat mouth of yours shut. It'll get you into trouble.
Or the behavior of Dr. Young. but the extremely limited movement can be boring on later playthroughs as well, and I would understand if a player disliked the intro initially for that reason. I do feel Rocksteady does enough right to justify the limited movement though. It's just the price of trying to make sure the player has the intended experience by taking some control away from them. I can't say this is great, especially since the release of Arkham Asylum, limited cinematic intros simply telling you what to do have become incredibly common. The rest of the level teaches you about fighting, using vantage points, gliding, ground pounds, titans, platforming, silent takedowns, stealth, and detective mode. Throughout, button prompts are common, and while I don't want them thrown in my face all of the time, I think they're used reasonably well, especially since they don't tell you what to do, they're telling you how to do it. Free-flow combat is how the player deals with unarmed thugs. Correctly timing the right move is the key to excelling, and it's unsurprising that it was based off of a rhythm game prototype, not based on speedy or complex inputs. Each successful attack adds 1 to the combo, with 3 combo initiating a state of free flow, where Batman will leap to the enemy the player attacks, even across the room, and strikes knock enemies down. Downed enemies can be taken out permanently, but the ground pound animation can't be cancelled, so you need space to do it without getting hit. The system as it is works well to encourage maintaining a combo, as dropping it limits your strike effectiveness and mobility, but you aren't really punished for failing to do so. There's a small problem I had that has ways around it, but I still noticed it. Most 3D action games have a lock-on feature if they ask a significant degree of precision from players regarding the directions of their attacks. Arkham Asylum lacks any such feature, which would usually be a problem, at least for me, but as I said, there are ways around this. When in combat, the camera zooms out and the player engages with multiple enemies at once. You simply move towards the enemy you wish to attack and perform the desired move. There are 2 enemy types which can only be struck after setting them up with specific moves. The cape stun allows you to hit knife wielders, and the evade allows you to hit stun baton wielders. Failure to do this drops your combo, and damages you in the case of stun batons. Thing is, if a special thug is right next to a normal thug, and you do a strike meant for the normal one, you may hit the special thug. Or when aiming a takedown at a knife thug, only to land it on the regular thug right next to him. It is based solely on what direction you push the stick, which has limited precision. There are a few ways around it. If there are a few thugs in the direction you push the stick, Batman will attack the closest one. You can account for it, but you need to make sure the camera angle allows you to gauge the distance. You can also evade over enemies to make a particular one the closest. You can avoid special thugs entirely until you thin the herd a bit if you want. I bring it up mainly because I'm impressed at how well this all works without a lock-on, which I prefer. As long as 2 types of thugs aren't tightly grouped together, it isn't a problem at all, and that hardly happens until extreme challenge maps anyway, which are optional. The control scheme doesn't really leave any room for a dedicated lock button anyway. And if the camera were always centered on a locked enemy, the combat couldn't work the way it does. That being said, it would just be helpful if there were a small visual element that told me exactly which enemy I will strike when I push a direction, maybe even toggled on and off in the options menu. The scoring system of the combat is based on highest combo and highest variation within a combo, with score converted to XP at the end of a fight. Combo grows in potential as the average number of thugs per fight increases, and variation potential grows as the moveset expands. In other words, the player has access to fewer moves, and fights include fewer thugs, which means the player earns less XP. As the game goes on, fights get greater numbers of thugs, and the player has more moves, so they can earn more XP. The requirements are low in the beginning compared to the end, so the proportion earned throughout remains the same, and performing better earns more XP. It fits together quite nicely. There are some level-based moves though that change up the combat significantly. Combo Batarang, Special Combo Throw and Takedown, 5 times Special Combo, and Critical Strikes. Combo Batarang allows Batman to throw a Batarang in a fight without dropping the combo. Self-explanatory. Knocking a thug down at range while maintaining the combo is incredibly useful, and I'm not sure why it couldn't have been a baseline ability. Throw and takedown are special combo moves that you can use after building to 8 combo. After building 8 combo, you can perform a special, but you can't stack it, and you have to get 8 more combo to use it again. This means you can't spam it, and dropping your combo while sitting on it or building to it again sets you back. Throw is useful for KOing more than one thug at once if there happen to be electric fences around. But takedown is more versatile, instantly KOing a single thug in a brutal way, regardless of any weapons they have. I like the unique one for stun batons. 5 times combo special lowers the combo necessary to use throw or takedown from 8 to 5, allowing more frequent usage. Critical strikes makes perfectly timed strikes worth 2 combo instead of 1 and do more damage. Enemies don't have health bars, so I'm not sure how much more damage they do, but I think it's enough that potential maximum combo increases, but not by double, which is what it would be without the damage buff. Taken together, crit strikes and 5 times combo mean the player can use specials every 3 attacks if they time them perfectly. This is a huge change from baseline combat. The interesting thing about it is that Rocksteady can never be sure the player has any one move at any given point in the game, since they are all optional. They can only increase the difficulty generally, assuming you have most of the upgrades by the end of the game. This basically means you can't be punished for not mastering the combat, but you can be rewarded for doing so. By the end game, you're facing regular, knife, stun, and titan thugs, often in areas where regular thugs have access to guns. The combat really comes into its own here, really lets you play around with it, sometimes with just regular thugs where you can really let loose. Sefton Hill, the lead designer, claimed that even with the leveling providing a sense of progression, out-of-the-box Batman at the beginning of the game should still feel solid. Doesn't feel like this in hindsight, since the combat expands so much. Out-of-the-box Batman feels underpowered in retrospect. But overall, this is a really satisfying combat system. Gadgets work on a Metroidvania philosophy of allowing access to an area by handling a single kind of obstacle. In this way, Rocksteady plans out where the player can go and when they can get there. Collectibles often require a gadget you don't have yet to get them, to encourage you to go back. They don't have much use in combat aside from the Batarang and Batclaw, but they are heavily used in stealth. Obstacles come in one of a few forms: vents or weak walls, electric gates or locked doors, and gaps or bottomless pits. Explosive gel in the Batclaw, cryptographic sequencer, and the line launcher handle them respectively. Vents and weak walls work on the same principle as one another. If Batman can stand next to it or over it, he can rip it off or lay the gel. If it's out of reach, like on a ceiling, he has to use the Batclaw. The sequencer can hack and explode the consoles throughout the island, but they're almost always connected to a gate, with a few plot-crucial exceptions. As long as there is a solid surface both ahead of and behind you, the line launcher will carry you forward. Since Rocksteady can use one of a few assets and build gaps into level design, this is fairly cost-effective for them, and they can just let you figure out what you need to do. They also use more than one obstacle to block your path, and they know you'll only have the tools to get past one, the one they want. For example, electric gates are used to block your path several times before you get the sequencer. They teach you how to use new gadgets by making sure your only forward option is blocked by something your new gadget works on right when you get it. Since gliding descends and the grapple gun is the only ascending function you have, the line launcher does feel naturally useful. I feel one gadget in particular went underutilized though: Sequencer. There are numerous things for it to unlock, but that's all it does. There's a range upgrade, but Rocksteady has to assume you never got it, so it's never required for mandatory progress. This scene with Harley Quinn highlights one way the sequencer could have been used in combat or stealth, having a kind of hand scan takedown to get past a lock or follow the fingerprints, maybe even shut down a security system in stealth. Every other gadget can be used for more than one thing, other than getting past obstacles. Batarang variants, Gel, Batclaw, and the line launcher all have a few uses. Gadgets work well for what they're meant to do, and there isn't much redundancy among them. But the sequencer could just as easily have been replaced by a lockpick Batarang if not for a few consoles behind electric fences, since that's all it does, which is a real shame because it's a really cool idea.